right, we are live. Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. This is the meeting of the Southampton Select Board for November 16th, 2021 at 6 o'clock. Those present, could you please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me? I pledge
allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Just to note for tonight, we have 4 members present. We have 1 member, John Lumber, who cannot be present tonight, but he is joining us via Zoom. And John, I believe you can hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So with that, since we don't have everybody present, any votes that we take tonight will be done by roll call. All right? Okay, so call to order, we've done that. There's no public hearings or presentations, or I don't think anybody's here for open time for the public. I'm feeling John's here for another reason. Yeah, okay. Nothing else in terms of really the agenda items except for our new business, which is really to focus on looking at the various articles for the warrant for the special town meeting on December 14th. And I think what I would like to do would be to take the most recent document that was handed out this evening that says draft warrant articles, STM on it, on the header, and we'll kind of go through in that order. Is that okay with everyone?
Yep.
Yes. John, I'm assuming you see that in your email? Okay, perfect. Great. All right, so this is in no, not necessarily the order that they may be on the warrant, but the way they're presented here tonight. So what we will end up doing is going through each of them, and it's my understanding that we would simply need to be in agreement to vote to put it on the warrant for the special town meeting. We're not looking at the precise language tonight. There's still language that has to be tinkered with, I believe, and certainly run by the general counsel before it's finalized, and so that wouldn't probably happen until our next meeting next week. Is that correct, Ed?
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so that said, let us take the very first one. Shall we just take turns reading out the language here?
Sure.
One by one? Okay.
Practice for the meeting.
Okay, go ahead, Francine, why don't you start with this first
Okay.
one? The first one is the library.
Library. To see if the town will vote to transfer a total of $9,897 from the retirement contributory account and transfer $6,726 to the library wage account, $1,591 to the library maintenance account, and $1,580 to the library utilities account, or take any other action relative thereto.
Okay, so do we have some discussion about that? I know we've had a presentation about this and have talked about this, the need for the article and where the money could come from. Is there any commentary, Rini? Yeah?
I have a question. So I just want to be clear about this. I think we talked about this last time. Will this enable the library to be open on Monday now?
It will allow them to be accredited. I don't know if that allows them to go back to their regular schedule. I do not know that.
I don't have that information.
Don't think we have that information. We can certainly find out by the next meeting.
I think it's important to know whether or not the wage line is a recovery versus an addition. Do we know that, Ed?
I believe it's recovery, but from this year's budget, not from last year's cuts.
Okay.
Okay. So we can double check those couple of questions, but otherwise, is there any thoughts on this? So the total is the 9897, which is broken down into 3 separate sublines, if you will, so that people understand that those, where those funds are being allocated, okay?
You want a motion for each one, or?
I think, yeah, we may group a couple of these that are kind of like.
All right, I'll make a motion
but
then to
yes.
approve the first, well, the first one we're talking about then for the library of $9,897 total to the library. You want me to read it separately, so to the different accounts, or no?
No, I think we can go
Okay.
from there. All
As
right.
we already just said then.
Okay. And that would be coming from the,
Right, retirement
contributory.
contributory account.
okay, that's fine. Okay, could I have a second, please?
Second.
Second.
All right, okay, yep. I heard Francine first, that's
That's
okay.
Tishman, aye.
Okay,
Oh, you didn't call for a vote, okay.
that's okay. John, did you have any comments or questions before we vote? Are you okay?
No, my only comment is on wordsmithing.
Uh-huh,
Yes.
And I know that you said this is in draft language,
right.
but only that I think the final wording should indicate that this is to maintain the minimum spending requirement.
Okay, to maintain the minimum, yeah, to maintain the minimum accreditation requirement? Okay, that sounds fair. We could maybe make that note as it goes off to the lawyers. Okay, so with that, not hearing any further discussion, let's take a roll call vote, please. Francine?
All right, Tishman, aye.
Groden, aye.
Piper, aye.
John?
Lumber, aye.
Fowles, aye. Okay. Very good, thank you. Okay, let's go to the police. Rini, you want to take those?
Sure. Transfer for police overtime. To see if the town will vote to transfer $15,000 from the police wage account to the police overtime wage account for overtime incurred due to unexpected staffing shortages or to take on any other action relative thereto, is the first one. The second one is to transfer for police expenses, to see if the town will vote to transfer $13,000 from the police wage account to the police expense account for expenses incurred due to unexpected cost. The third is transfer for police building expenses, to see if the town will vote to transfer $3,000 from the communication expense account to the police building expense account for expenses incurred to maintain the building's generator maintenance contract, trash removal, and light replacements. And lastly, transfer for police equipment maintenance, to see if the town will vote to transfer $4,650 from the regional lockup assessment account to the police equipment maintenance account in order to maintain the subscription plans for 2 electronic traffic safety radar signs and 2 electronic public messaging boards, or take any other action relative thereto.
Okay, thank you. Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions on this? So we basically have, the way they are laid out right now, there are 4 separate requests from the police department, transferring of $15,000, $13,000, $3,000, and $4,650 altogether. Those monies, however, are all internal transfers from the way this is read right here. This is not additional money.
And it totals $35,650.
Okay, $35,650
$650.
total? Okay, thank you. And I think we had heard the other day that the last one on the police equipment maintenance from the regional lockup was because the regional lockup money was no longer needed. That was being taken care of by the
State of Massachusetts.
by the state. So that one is no longer a need in the budget, and that money therefore is available to make this transfer.
Was that the amount that was in the line item, Ed, 4650?
No, it's less than, I believe the line item itself was $5,000.
Okay.
I'd have to check to double check that, but.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any thoughts, questions, comments about any of these 4? I guess one, I noticed your note here, Ed, maybe we could try to make this one article for all 4 of these?
That is my intent, yes.
It seems like in order to keep this, moving along and to reduce the number of actual articles, that would be a good idea if we can put it out clearly, given that these are all really internal transfers, and they're all pretty much like-minded in that sense.
And just the way you did it for the library above. Just
Yeah,
so
Right.
money's
in a way,
out of
right.
Different accounts.
Exactly. Okay.
Robert's in support of that?
I will run it by Robert.
Okay. All right, any comments or questions? John, anything? No?
No, no objection.
All right, could I have a motion then to put this forward? And if you want to do, I guess we'd probably better read each one, even though we may combine them.
All right,
All
so
right.
moved, 15,000, you want me to read them all for the motion?
Just, yeah, to transfer
Okay.
from where to where,
From
that's all.
$15,000 from the police wage account to the police overtime wage account. $13,000 from the police wage account to the police expense account. $3,000 from the communications expense account to the police building expense account. and $4,650 from the regional lockup assessment account to the police equipment maintenance account.
Okay, I have a motion. Could I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? If not, could I have a roll call vote, please, to essentially approve all 4 of these transfers?
Fishman, aye. Groden, aye.
Piper, aye.
Lumber, aye.
Fowles, aye. Okay, thank you very much. All right, next, how about Joy?
Sure. Ambulance staffing. To see if the town will vote to transfer $30,000 from the ambulance receipts reserved for appropriation to the EMS wage account, or take any other action relative thereto.
Okay. John, would you like to speak on that since you're here, or?
I was asked to be here. There are questions that you have. I did supply some information to Ed, but it's also,
I think we have it on the mutual aid. We had some questions on that, I think, so when we get to that one. But I don't know if there was, if you just want to just reiterate, this was from the ambulance receipts to the EMS wage account. So this was, I think, part of what you were telling us a couple of meetings ago in terms of making your paramedics more
competitive
competitive,
wage.
right?
Yeah, paramedics and a slight increase to basics. Basically, you know, we've been, we've had some staffing shortfalls. Just to give a brief rundown, you know, in FY '20, we had an EMS wage budget of $231 in 5-month period, because I broke it down from FY '20, FY '21, and FY '22, just in receipts. In 5 months in FY '20, we had gathered about $74,326 for a total revenue of $189 for that FY '20 year. Last year, FY '20 and FY '21, our EMS wage budget was reduced down to $206,920. In a 5-month revenue period, in this revenue period, we collected $71,343. We had a total revenue of $205,106, almost the complete amount of our wage budget. This year, our EMS wage budget is $220. In the first 5 months, we've collected $84,000. And that's, but the biggest problem that we're having is that we're missing about 20% of our calls due to lack of staffing.
Okay.
It's not just Southampton, it's really regional based. There's less people that are signing up for EMS. Nobody wants to get into the back of an ambulance anymore. Just pandemic is part of it, I think. And low wages is pretty extensive across the industry. So everybody's having some challenges.
And that is this other part that I think we did have about the ambulance runs that all ties into this,
Yep.
this request. Okay, yeah. If you want to
So
go through some of that,
so
sure.
for ambulance runs, I can, would you like me to go down through?
Sure, why
ambulance
don't
runs?
you, we can do that, yeah.
So total calls this year, up to date from July 1 till present, is 208. Mutual aids given by Southampton to other communities. We went to Easthampton 5 times, Westfield once, and Northampton twice. Mutual aid received to Southampton. This is a big number. 47 times we've received mutual aid. That breaks down approximately to non-SFD transport. Means we don't collect any money for it. It's transported by another community. That was 26 times. It has a potential loss of $63,000. The problems with no staff available at all is only 4 times. SFD engaged in another call, so our ambulance is out and the call comes in, so we call another community to help, is 6 times. When we only had 1 SFD on staff available, 16 times. We have SFD transports, but no medic available. That was 21 times. We actually, what that's called is called an intercept. We call for an intercept. The intercept charges are anywhere from $275 to $375 per intercept fee. 21 calls is anywhere from about $5,700 to $7,800, depending on what fee is charged. Easthampton came in 17 times. Action came in once. Westfield came in 3 times. Wages, since October 12th, we raised wages. I've sent Ed a thing, I'm not sure if you folks had got it, just to, it overviews what, I can't name towns, but other clients in the area and Southampton. We went from an old rate on a BLS call from $7.85 to about $9.67, from an ALS call from $9.41 to $1,600, ALS2, $13.65 to $2,457. A mileage charge, we went from $15.75 to $27.95, and we charge for ancillaries. That hasn't changed. So we've increased our revenue as best we can to make it competitive in the area. The revenues that we bring in are close to what the town has budgeted for EMS expense. The monies that are taken in for ambulance receipts are supposed to be used for ambulance business. What I'm looking to do is really make a relatively competitive wage. I'm still staying at the low end to towns surrounding us, but trying to make it a more attractive place for EMTs to work a second job and to get some of this coverage. We are up in revenue this year, $84,000 as opposed to 74, 71 in the last 2 years. But we've missed 20% of the calls. So that's the first thing is we're not serving the community the way I believe we need to, which is to get as close to 100% of the calls as we can with staff from the station so that we're providing the best service. The other is a revenue aspect. If we're missing 20% of the calls, we're missing that potential revenue. So, the proposal is to take money from ambulance receipts, transfer it into ambulance wages. The wages I've calculated, if it went in for a town meeting, sorry, I gotta put on my glasses again. If we work from the December town meeting, so from 12/14 to 6/30/22, it's approximately 200 days. If we go $3 an hour times 24 hours times two people, that's $144 for 2 medics per day. If we do 200 days times $144 per day, that's $28,800. There's approximately, $1,200 leeway just to get the 30,000 in receipts. There may be some other cost savings as we move along, but I really need to, there's a one-shot deal going to town meeting. So that's why the proposal is for $30,000. Any questions?
I guess the question I have is the lack of people available only contributable to the wages, or is it a shortage of people in the area?
Both.
Okay. So this may solve part of it, but not all of it.
I'm trying to do my best to attract individuals here, and there's no way that I can, I'm trying to retain people also.
Yeah.
We've lost people. I'm trying to recruit people.
Okay.
So it's both retention, recruitment, and trying to offer
Okay.
quality service to the town.
Okay.
Ed, what would typically happen with the ambulance receipts?
Well, this would make 3 things. One is traditionally, and in this fiscal year, we used $100,000 of those receipts to, as revenues, to go against the fiscal year '22 expenses in the operating budget. In fact, I should probably look at this to see if there's enough now, because it comes due, and I think it's April, so it'll be before the annual town meeting. We utilize those receipts to pay the debt on the new ambulance, and then this would be the third request out of those ambulance receipts for this year. And if my memory's correct, I believe the debt on the ambulance with interest is about $55,000.
I think it says so on here.
We've got it under short-term debt on your list here.
Yeah.
It's due on, well, I don't know.
Yeah, it's rolled in with the other one, so it doesn't stick
Yeah.
out separately.
204,194.
The short-term
Well,
debt?
that's a bunch of items rolled together. It's not just the ambulance itself. My memory is that, maybe that is well, that's the whole principle, 204, so it doesn't
It's the principle, yeah,
show the breakout of the
the interest is.
the yearly payment. But like I say, my memory is it's like $55,000.
Can I ask another question, Ed? I had asked about whether or not there were other funds available, or if it was practical for ARPA funds that could be used for employment incentives, things like that.
I have not gotten a specific response to that as far as being used for incentives as far as hiring, like hiring bonuses.
John, can I ask you a question on the information that you provided where it says current budget shortfall? Can you explain what you meant by the first one, 11,144 reduction in town budget, FY21 wages from FY19 levels?
Okay, I'm not sure which one you're looking at.
In here, probably have to go to the podium, though.
Yeah, have you back here, sorry.
I know you probably want to make notes on it. So there is, from FY20 to FY22, we've seen an 11,144 reduction in our town budget. So it says FY19 to 21, but it's actually FY20 to 22. There was a cost of living increase that was put into place for all town employees, which would have added to my budget, to the EMS fire budget, but for $9,276.84. So one of them is the budget has been cut from where it was back in FY20.
Is that because of when we had 21, when we had all
When we
departments
all
across
had-
the board?
Yeah, when we all had to cut. But trying to manage the department while people are getting into the back of an ambulance with sick people, it's hard to, I can't offer them anything. I can't offer them increased wages. I can't, my hands are pretty tied. So that was the challenge there with those numbers. I just wanted to outlay those numbers because it is a shortfall from two years ago. And that's what
And is there any ability to go to PQB on these positions, to have them, I don't know if the job description has changed with COVID or anything else, to have them be reanalyzed in terms of, like, to go through what most people do in the town if they want to have positions be relooked at?
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with the advice from PPPE. And, for the fire department, my position is part of it covers setting wages for the department, but I'm happy to work with Personnel Policy Procedure Board to help set those wages. I think that if you do a cost comparison, which I'd be more than happy to work with somebody if they wanted to sit down and do a cost comparison for wages, we're under every other town, even with the $3 increase. So I'm not sure where we want to get to with this. I'd be happy to go through that motion, but I don't think there's time before the town meeting. I did approach it. I'm on a meeting with PPPB only because I thought it would be helpful to state my case, to have them behind me. But I'm looking for the support of the town to run the ambulance with.
John, can you remind us, I think you mentioned this the last time you came and gave us a presentation, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, the number of people that you have on right now as paramedics and EMTs?
Yeah, I don't have that number directly in my head.
But you're short, your full, whatever your full staffing complement would be for the 3 shifts, is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a magic number for that. So let's say, if I may, I'll use some arbitrary numbers. Let's say I have 50 people that are on the department. Let's say that 25 of them are paramedics.
Okay.
If they're not available, don't show up, stop showing up, show up occasionally. If they take a shift once a month, do you cut them off the roster? Or do you leave them on the roster hoping that their lives will change and that maybe they'll come in?
Then, yeah.
So the number of people that are on the roster may look inflated, only because I reluctantly take people off the roster if they have any possibility of being available.
Coming back, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It doesn't cost the town anything to have them on the roster.
Yeah, just to put it in perspective, because I did look at that the last time I signed the payroll warrant, and there were 51 names on it.
Yeah,
But out of the 51, during that pay period, we were only paying 26 people. So your numbers are,
yeah.
right on what
Right.
what
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
is
because
evidence.
I basically budget to have 2 people there 24/7.
Right.
And then- and
And
then
one of those has
fire-
to be a paramedic
One of them needs to be a paramedic in order to,
on each of the shifts, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if we don't have that, are we running into issues with accreditation or licensing or some such?
There has been issues with that. That's one of the struggles. I'm hoping that the state will understand that, this is not just Southampton that's having trouble with these kind of things.
Right.
So I'm hoping that the state can show us some flexibility as we show them sincere effort. So
Okay.
I have an ambulance inspection that'll be coming through. Usually it happens in December, where I take all 54 people, bring in all their training records, go through the ambulances, and if there's concerns, which they had some years ago, just because we weren't covering night shift, and that's why it had gone to a town meeting vote to cover night shift and increase budget.
Right, okay, yeah, thanks. Ed, sorry.
Yes, I just want to correct the chief on one thing is, yes, it does cost the town to have individuals on that roster, because for each police or fire EMS individual, whether full-time, on-call, or part-time, it costs us for our police and fire insurance.
Insurance.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Bill?
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. John, did you have any questions out there? Don't want to miss,
Yeah, a couple questions, and I'll just say this, I can kind of make out what the fire chief is saying, so I'll just pose my questions and I'll leave it to you, Chris. But I guess my first question is, does the ambulance receipt fund even have enough money to support this after the debt service?
As of,
Question two is, this question puts $30,000 into wages. Does it then, if passed, and the wording that's there, is it frozen, subject to PPPB? Or are there gonna be automatic raises that are outside the control of everybody else?
okay, thank you.
Those
Okay.
are my two primary ones.
Okay, did you get
so
that, John?
primary question, as of 4:30 today, the town from Coastal Billing, they provided a number of $84,053.26 in receipts from July 1st till present.
Okay, so 84,000 in receipts from July 1st to now, John, if you didn't hear that,
Okay,
from Coastal Billing.
$30,000 in my position. I am allowed to set wages, so it could go into effect directly after town meeting.
Okay, John, I'm sorry, Ed,
Would like to clarify that, under the strong chief provision,
Right.
the chief has the ability to do that with the select board's approval also, not just on his own.
okay. All right,
yeah, so I guess, Chris, I would just say, $68,064 is owed net service, another 30, that gets us to 98,000. It sounds like we're gonna have enough receipts to cover this if there's no other expenses, but then, I guess my objection is that I understand what the chief is trying to do and increase wages. As an individual, I'm not 100% at where he wants to go with the wages, so my hesitance is to approve 30,000 to allow it to just happen without further scrutiny and discussion on the wages.
okay, but I think Ed just clarified that further discussion does have to happen with select board's approval, right?
That is correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
correct?
Yeah, it's approval of budget, yep.
Yeah, right? Okay, so does that help, John, with your
I,
hesitancy? Do we need to phrase, well, I guess,
No, it helps. I'm not sure I'm over the line to vote yes yet, but
okay,
I also anticipate I'm in the minority here.
okay.
I mean,
Well, I have consistently have concerns about mid-year raises. The Department of Revenue does not support it. All along, I've felt like departments really need to go up against, annual town meeting. So every time there's been suggestion of mid-year raises or wage increases, it has always come back to bite us. So I guess I'm having a hard time supporting it. I'll just say that. I have a question. This is really a bigger question, John. I don't expect you to answer it in detail, but has it been looked at in terms of alternative staffing, such as, not necessarily this year, but in general, having dedicated, you rely a lot on people whose primary job is outside of town.
correct.
Are there other options for having dedicated staff so that at least 40 hours a week, a whole shift, 5 days a week or whatever is covered? Is that because of benefits? Is that not as cost effective or what?
It's something that I'm actually going to be proposing for the next budget cycle.
Okay. Because it does seem like if you can, I know when we're talking to about the dispatchers, having a dedicated one, person that's full-time during the day, at least that that's covered 5 days or
Yeah,
something.
For that shift, at least for the week, yeah.
And is there any contractual thing that can be done as opposed to just waiting for an emergency to happen, where at a month at a time, a contract could be had with Easthampton or Westfield that we know we're not going to have somebody on Sunday during the day? Can there be some sort of a contract with another town?
There's the possibility of that contract. I think some of the problem that you run into is if you start to rely on that, one of the problems that you have is there's an industry standard of 8-minute response time. So if you went with Easthampton, you'd be shorting 25% of the town for having an 8-minute response. And any of the other surrounding communities, if they actually put staff in the town, if that was trying to do coverage from town, they're all paying more than we are per hour with benefits.
Okay.
Right now, honestly, I would really, I have no problem putting this in front of the community. I think really let them decide whether they think a wage increase is the appropriate thing to do for the fire department. If they believe that a quality fire department is in their interest, I'd certainly be more than happy to, right now, you can be a bus driver for the school at $25 an hour. And so what's the incentive to be a paramedic?
See, I think those arguments are not going to be helpful. How would anybody say anything other than, yes, we want a quality fire department? That's a no-brainer. I think the issue for the select board and for me is my responsibility is fiscal responsibility. So I don't know that it's, it's all about putting it in front of the voters. That's what our job is, about fiscal responsibility. So I think that there's a difference there than just saying, do you want a quality fire department? Who would say no to that? Nobody I know.
Well, I look at it as a business decision, and you look at revenue, and you look at wages, and you look at personnel and retention of personnel. And you have the ultimate decision, and if you don't feel like you don't feel like we're going to retain people or get people for additional funding, if you think that that is not the way to go, that's your decision to make. I'm just standing up here because I believe it is the direction to go for the town and the department, and I do believe it translates to quality service.
It's just unfortunate that cost effectiveness committee this would
I know,
be one
we
of the
haven't
things
started
that
yet.
they would be looking at that isn't not just underway, but they would have to be completed to have answered this question tonight.
Yeah.
And that we know isn't going to happen. But those would be the kind of things that we should be looking at and devising alternatives, and based on those alternatives, making decisions about how we're going to use our money.
Yeah, and I would very much appreciate a discussion, because I think some of the full-time staffing idea that you've talked about is one that I've been researching, just because I do believe that we need some alternatives to some of the inconsistencies that you have with per diem employees.
So just back on, just for my own clarity, on the non-SFD transport, the only one staff available meant that's only a medic and not a,
The
sorry,
problem is if you
EMT,
only,
but not a paramedic.
if you only have one staff, you're not allowed to transport.
Right.
So we have to give the call away.
Okay. So there were 16 of those, and then 17 intercepts from Easthampton, so 33 altogether, that perhaps if we had more competitive wages, you feel we could not have as many intercepts and not be so short-staffed, that we would have at least 2 of the shifts staffed on a daily basis?
Yeah, my goal is to absolutely cover as much as I can. It's always been my goal since I've been here, and I wouldn't be standing here today if that wasn't still my goal. When I look at the numbers as I've broken them all out, and I've actually, done a lot of data mining and gone through some individual calls to get it, the only ones that we truly can't get back easily are the ones when we've already gone on another call and the ambulance is out of town
Sure.
at the hospital. That's only 6 calls.
Right.
I see, no SFD staff available, those 4, that's terrible. I see that when only 1 staff, 16, that's terrible. So that's 20 right there that I just wouldn't, I don't want to see.
Yeah.
The 21 without a medic available, I strive to run the department in a way that, to close that gap. And unfortunately, when it comes to per diem employees, where they can work anywhere, Granby offers a lot more money than we do. They can make a choice between Granby or Southampton. And so, I know, Rini, that you don't like the idea of just going up in the middle. I've been very conservative with wages, I think, and the fact that we've retained staff through a pandemic at really, minimal wages compared to every other community. I would love to have some help to prove that, whether it be Personnel Policy Procedure Board. These aren't numbers that I just get from, that I make up. I would really appreciate the community in whatever way it takes form to understand the numbers and the challenges that I'm up against. And I could use the partnership of this select board and the community to do the best we can with the EMS and fire.
A minute ago, you mentioned something about the $3 increase. Now, is that what you'd be proposing for the paramedics? Is that right?
Yeah, it's a $3 increase. That's sort of the maximum. What I'd be looking at is a $3 increase for paramedics and a $1 increase for the basics.
I'm wondering that, I guess that wouldn't be that would be more in the explanation of a question at town meeting, right? It wouldn't be anything that would be in the motion, I mean, to help voters understand
Wouldn't be in the
that.
motion. It might pop up in the summary,
In the summary, yeah.
right, but not in the
Not in the
article.
motion, but in a summary of-
Not in the article or the motion
Yeah.
The
itself.
way it's written here is a justification.
Yeah, a summary of the reason
Yeah.
behind it. Okay. Just clarity, yeah, okay. All right.
Chris?
Yes, go ahead,
Chris?
John. Yes, go ahead.
I guess another thing, and perhaps it's already been mentioned, but it's not clear to me on this end, is I guess I would view it differently if we are just trying to increase wages to stay competitive, or are we trying to increase wages because we have failed to staff? So I'd be interested to know within this fiscal year, by the number of hours, if any at all, how many hours has the ambulance been dark, that there's been no way to go out? And I understand we rely on mutual aid, but I think this goes to the perspective, or the perspective of the voters, because there's a number out there of about 58 hours cumulative that the ambulance was not in service, and the residents wouldn't get it. They would get mutual aid, yes. But is that an accurate statement? And if it's not, how many hours has the ambulance been dark?
If that's a question directed to me, it's certainly something I could research, but you have hit the problem on the head.
I mean, here you said there's been no staff available. That was for sure, that nobody went out at all,
That's correct.
or 4 calls, however many hours that equals, right?
That's correct.
So that's something we could probably find out to add to the further explanation, John? Is that what you're asking for, perhaps?
Yeah, because again, I go back to the citizens. I mean, the citizens sent a clear message multiple years ago that they want this level of ambulance service. And if they believe that we're continuing to honor that and have 24/7 coverage because they don't know any different. And this is just an opportunity to increase wages and possibly recruit better staff. That's one thing that probably isn't going to go over so well. But the other thing is if it's, hey, listen, we've been dark for
Yeah.
24 shifts times 8 hours. Yes, there were no calls, or there were only 4 calls within those 30 shifts. But here's the potential hazard that we just haven't been able to recruit, and we can't staff the station. I think that's a different message.
Yeah, I think it should.
Well, I think any of those calls missed, so, dark calls, we could certainly get that number. That's all, I have schedules that go back as far as we need them. And we could get that number, and I'm sure that number is going to be an upsetting number, and certainly goes to the point that I'm making. I think when we just have one person on a shift, that's equally as disturbing, only because we don't have a functional ambulance. And I think that non-functional ambulance combined with those dark hours are a concern to this community. And I appreciate a partnership here to address the problem.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the reason for the intercept, so that's because you didn't have,
The intercept,
Staffing.
we had 2 people on board, but they
Yeah.
weren't to paramedic staffing. Intercept
Right.
isn't as big a concern because we can transport a patient with a basic level staffing. When we have only 1 staff, we cannot even transport. So it speaks directly to what John is saying, and saying that the ambulance is basically not available. We have 1 person who's showing up and can stop a bleed, start CPR, but it's not the level of staffing that the state allows us for transport. So the ambulance is dark, using that phrase. The ambulance is dark when we only have 1. The ambulance is dark when we have none.
all right, any other,
Can I ask another question
Yeah.
about the ambulance fund? So the rates went up October 12th. Do you have a projected number in terms of revenue, new revenue for the rest of the fiscal year?
Yeah, all I can do is historic. I mean, historically, like I say, in FY '20, we were 189. In FY '21, we were 206. And this year, we're already above where we were in the 5 months projection. That's why I stated that to start, because we were about 74 in FY '20, we were 71. in
That's
FY
without the increase.
That's without the increase. The increase is only valid because, they're tricky numbers. Because you can increase your payment, and from a private insurance company, they will pay.
Right, you're only
that.
going to get the assignment.
But the Medicare are only going to pay.
You're going to get $400.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, amount. So there's the potential, like I say, the potential of $63,000, but is that real revenue? It's probably not real revenue. You're probably looking at, historically, from all departments, you collect between 40 and 45% as to what you bill. So we may bill at $400,000, we collect $200,000, shooting from the hip, and every year it's increased. So this year, just looking at our run numbers being up, our revenue being up, even with the dark, no coverage, no ambulance to service this community, problems that we're having.
I just would have a follow-up question to that then. So the ambulance fund usually covers the debt on the ambulance and
Yeah.
also wages, right?
It's for anything related to EMS. I'd have to read the
Right.
language specifically.
Like I say, traditionally, we use $100,000 of those receipts as revenues to offset the operating budget.
That's what they use.
The operating budget specific to the fire department
Just in general, because
Just in general,
in general?
yeah.
because EMS wages are generally more than we take in, just, maybe not be much, but we also have EMS expenses. Then revenue that isn't earmarked for an ambulance or in the occasional, like this $30,000, would often gets put into general fund just to use as revenue.
Right,
for
but
the
it's a
town.
line item paying for something, so what do
It's
we,
not paying for anything. It's a separate.
It's a revenue.
It's revenue. but
Revenue,
it's a-
right.
What type of a revolving
It's
fund
like,
account?
trying to identify where your specific Real estate tax went in the operating budget.
Right, but what I'm saying, okay.
And it's a revolving fund, so the money.
So we're taking $30,000 out of ambulance
Revolving
and,
fund.
right, and we'll have $30,000 less for the general fund. Do we anticipate the receipts are exceeding $30,000 this year?
They've already 84,000.
The estimate would be 200,000, of
Yeah.
which if we didn't do anything further, if we did the 100,000, roughly 54 or 55 for the ambulance payment, and 30 here, you're at about 184, 185. So you haven't utilized all the receipts. You've come close to, but you haven't used all of receipts for the year.
And from what John said, so from July 1st to the middle of November now, so that's 4.5 months, you're already at 84,000 in receipts.
Correct.
So that's not
Did we lose
even,
John?
sorry?
Did we lose John?
I think he just put his silhouette up.
Yeah,
He may have stepped away.
I think he's still there.
Okay.
So that's not even half the year yet. So if that were to continue, we should be more than 160. Double that would be 160, so closer to the 200,000,
Yeah, it's been
Revenue from what-
typically close to.
what the estimate is.
It's been
And the debt-
increasing every year.
Right, and the debt service, you said, is somewhere 50 to 60,000, 55 to 60,000?
My memory is it's like 54 or 55.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, in years past, we had paid off the other ambulance, and there was being money set aside to purchase a new ambulance as per the truck replacement schedule. And then any leftover monies were allocated to the town budget to offset town costs.
Okay.
I have another question, I hope you don't mind, but I wasn't here when you came last time and you were talking about your budget and the request when you initially came to the select board, and you had said that you didn't really remember meeting with the finance committee. I actually remember you meeting with the finance committee because I watched it, and I do believe that they had said that there was, the wage line was actually over for the amount of hours that were calculated.
Remember that, I apologize for not remembering that when I was stating it off the cuff last time.
Okay.
In that meeting with finance, there was no indication that I heard that they were going to reduce wages. And so that's why it was a surprise to me when
Okay.
wages got reduced. And I apologize for remembering that as feeling like it had never happened.
That was,
From what little I saw, and I was only watching it on TV too, it was more, I think I heard them talking about the trends of expenditure, so that the trending, even though you had the 220K or something budgeted for that, that had not really been the real expense pattern that they had seen in the previous year, is what I thought I remembered, but I don't,
Yeah, no, and I mean, the ambulance is really still in its infancy, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, it's just really been fully funded with a second shift for not very many years.
Mhm.
And so, as we've, you know, gotten the sleeping quarters, as we've started to build up staff, you know, there's always some challenges to recruitment, retention, all those kinds of things.
Mhm.
And so, we have recognized savings, and when we don't have the coverage or adequate coverage, because if we go back and look at, although we had staffing that were in the firehouse, they weren't paramedic level staffing. So it's hard to budget, because you need to budget for where you should be with paramedic staffing. And yet, if you don't have it, you save money. But it's a false savings because you're not giving the adequate coverage.
sure. Okay. All right, I
I
think we've
just
had
have-
ample, oh, sorry, good. Ed, one last one?
Just one clarification. Jen Day says that the debt and interest for the ambulance for this year should be about 65,000.
65,000 for
Yeah.
the debt this year, okay, including interest, okay.
I do have one question.
Yes, go ahead, Joy.
So essentially, you're saying if we transfer this $30,000 to increase the pay for paramedics and the EMTs, can you guarantee that we're going to be able to be covering these empty shifts?
No. It gives me the tools to do the job. Without the tools to do the job, I can guarantee you, we absolutely won't be able to. If you give me the tools to do the job, you know, as per strong chief, I can set a wage, but I can't guarantee that people are gonna come flying through the door.
Mhm.
All I can do is have the tools to try and recruit and retain.
Have you had any discussions with employees or anyone who's
Yeah, if
on
you
the
want a
roster
ton of
about this?
Employees here, they all offered to come over tonight. I don't know, I'm not trying to turn it into a.
No,
circus.
I just want to know what the employee feedback was,
Yeah,
you know,
well,
if
the
you're
employees,
offering raises.
They all recognize that, it would be nice if you folks went and talked to them, just because they all recognize how much work I do to be fair with them. And I think a lot of them are here because, I don't mean to be self-centered with it, but I work hard for them. I recognize that my job is to support the people that are doing the work, which are the EMTs and paramedics and firefighters that come out during a pandemic and stay with this town to provide service. They're the ones doing it. So I believe that each and every one of them recognizes that, and that's a large reason why they're here. I think that it would be a challenge for morale to not have this $30,000 be appropriated.
Thank you.
Can I ask, is the article going to be just what's here?
Is there-
Transfer 30,000 from ambulance receipts reserved for appropriation to the EMS wage account.
Okay,
That's,
Usually the article itself is fairly short and
Short.
simple.
Okay.
It's the summary that
okay.
might be longer.
So I don't support any of this. I can't verify the salaries. I don't support comparing it to a bus driver. I'm going to just tell you what bothers me in this town is when I see it written somewhere in the minutes somewhere that says, I'll give you an example, and I'll use the Board of Health. The Board of Health was, expenses were cut, and we only had $511 for the year. And I want to stand up and say, because we didn't want to take it out of the wage line that year because the health director was on vacation. So forever, I'm going to hear that they were only given $511. So forever, I'm going to hear that during the pandemic year, every single department was cut. So you weren't the only department that was cut.
Correct.
So I don't support any of this, but I do support this particular article because it's a issue of public safety. And I think a lot of other departments in this town are dealing with the pandemic and, not so much staffing, but certainly.
Low wages, I think that there's
Certainly, lots of people dealing with low wages. They're trying to recruit a principal assessor, and they have to go through the channels of going to PQB, having it be rescored, all of that. I'm worried about the next year when we're going to have another, where are we going to be next year in terms of this? It's just not a static thing. So it's against my best revenue judgment in the way we're supposed to do things according to DOR, but we're also in the middle of a pandemic, and I certainly wouldn't want any neighbor or community member to not have ambulance service because of $30,000. If it can help to bring in people, then I can support it. But I think that there needs to be a bigger analysis of how to provide the right.
I would welcome the help for that.
I'll be happy to
Because
help.
it's easy to not understand any of the numbers that I have there or agree with them because they can't be validated. But they can be validated if we take the time to do it.
okay. I think that the basic point is that the article itself, the way it's worded, is simple enough. It's the justification that I think we're all saying needs to be clearer and more substantial to be sure that the townspeople understand why this is being put forward.
Yeah, I can't stand behind this.
That is not part of the article per se.
That's why I
Yeah,
asked.
Right.
yeah, Rini, I'd be more than happy. I respect your opinions. I'd be more than happy to get your help to polish the justifications because, it's hard for me because I do put my heart and soul into EMS and fire service for 30-plus years. And it is a challenge. All the numbers that I've gotten for surrounding communities, they're easy to get, call, they're public record. I'd be more than happy to have help to do that. That's why I actually had reached out to Personnel Policy Procedure Board initially, just because I didn't want it to just be me and numbers that you saw because they looked arbitrary to you. I want it to be substantial numbers. It would be nice if the town did a wage determination across the board. to see where we stand, because I know that I'm not the only department that's underfunded. I know that this town really needs a 2.5 override, and that's something that I don't really have control on. But I wholeheartedly support it, and I believe it's the direction that we need to go. And I'd be more than happy on a town meeting floor to justify that certainly for my department, but, well, the town's fire EMS department, that we need these kind of fundings. And if they really want to pursue having a quality ambulance service with the appropriate staffing and perhaps some full-time staffing so that you don't have some of these kind of shortfalls that we have, I think those are great ideas. And I think that they really could be an article for a 2.5 override. And you're right, there's not enough money to go around. So
Well,
I respect your perspective, and I really would appreciate your help into some of the
Well,
justification.
anytime you do 24/7 staffing in healthcare, you have permanent, you have on-call, you have this, you have that, you have contract, and I think I think it needs to be looked at.
I'm more than happy to do that, just because it is, I mean, to manage 51 part-time people is herding cats.
Yeah,
I'm sure it is.
there's no question about it.
Francine, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. All right, so I think I would like to, just to add on that I'm hoping that once we have our cost efficiencies committee up and rolling, some of these are the kinds of discussions that we need to be talking about too, in terms of how do we
Excellent.
make this more than just one level of a department issue, but it is an across-the-board issue in terms of attracting and retaining quality staff. So
yeah.
that's part of the reason for this committee, to get together and figure out how we can do better to share services, sell services, buy services, whatever it may be. So, all right, I think we've had ample discussion on this one article. I'd like to have a motion on the floor, please, if someone would be so willing to make a motion.
I'll move. Yes, I'll move to transfer $30,000 from ambulance receipts reserve for appropriation to the EMS wage account.
Okay. Could
I'll
I have a
second.
Okay, second by Joy. Okay, all in favor? Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Tishman, aye?
Groden, aye.
Piper, aye.
Longworth, no.
Fowles, aye. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thank
Thank
you
you,
very
John.
much. Yep, thank you.
Thanks, John.
All right, next one. And I'll take on this one, unpaid bills.
It would be Joy.
Joy, would you like to do that one?
Yes, please.
Yep.
Unpaid bills. To see if the town will vote to transfer $583 to the prior year bills account for unpaid bills from fiscal 2021 for the recycling of mattresses for the transfer station from Raw Materials Recovery Corporation. Said sum to be taken from the fiscal year 22 Transfer Station Enterprise Fund operating expenses, and to transfer $63 to the prior year bills account for unpaid bills from fiscal 2021 for water service to Center Cemetery. Said sum to be taken from the fiscal year 22 Cemetery Commission expenses, or take any other action relative thereto.
Okay, thanks. Any comment or discussion? Ed, anything on this? Seems pretty straightforward on this one.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on this?
Nope.
If not, could I have a motion?
I'll move $583 from the prior year bill account,
As stated here.
as stated here. Yeah, thank you.
As stated in the draft article. Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah,
How about a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor?
Tishman, aye?
Fowles, aye.
Groden, aye.
Piper, aye.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, John, you want to take the next one? Highway dump truck?
To see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $294,000 to purchase a new single-axle dump truck with plow and standard body for the highway department, to determine whether this appropriation shall be raised by borrowing or otherwise, or take any other action relative thereto.
Okay. So this one I think will generate some
Yeah.
discussion. So let us talk about this. I think we have this very lengthy sort of spreadsheet from, I guess, from Jen and Ed that put this together, just taking a look at our current debt. This is a question that had come up at the last meeting where we wanted to understand the implications of having this article on the town warrant. If there was anything that would be coming off the debt schedule that this could kind of fill in and replace, or how this would fit. I thought I saw one here somewhere, did I
Yeah, the
not?
water system. Is that it?
That's separate, isn't it?
Yeah, it's paid through the enterprise fund.
So the water
Does that
system,
affect
yeah,
our
that's where I was going,
Debt
right.
limit?
Yeah.
So the water system upgrade is the only
Does it affect
thing,
it, though?
Can't hear you.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, sorry, the water system upgrade is the only thing coming off in 2022 from what we see here, but that is covered through the water enterprise fund, I'm assuming, and not out of our general budget.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what I was saying.
So therefore, there isn't really anything
No.
immediate.
No,
You have a big one coming off, but not until April of '23,
Which one is that?
The ambulance.
the ambulance.
Oh, yeah, well, the State House, well,
Yeah,
yeah,
it comes off, but the flip side of that is don't forget that generally we pay through the ambulance receipts,
I
so.
see,
we're looking
okay.
for those from
Okay.
other sources.
Can we refinance the Larrabee one?
We went through refinancing about, I think it was 2 years ago, and that one did not come up as being advantageous to
Okay,
refinance at the time.
okay.
Now, question, am I wrong, or do I not see the East Street Bridge on here?
You do not, because we have not borrowed for that as of yet.
So that's still another borrowing that's not even here yet.
Correct.
That's a
But
given.
don't forget, that is a debt exclusion, so
Right, okay.
that will not affect the operating
Right.
budget. That will be paid as a debt exclusion, as an additional to the residential
But
and
that's
commercial
1 point-
taxpayers, and then when it is paid off, that will fall off.
It goes away.
But
right.
that's
goes away.
1.5 million, is it not?
What's that?
Isn't that 1.5 million?
1.6.
Okay. So, John, go ahead.
Chris?
Yes?
Chris, so I believe I asked for this at the last meeting, and this is wonderful, I love it, but it's commingled, so I don't know if the authors could correct it, but this has both inside and outside the debt limit debt, which really doesn't paint the picture for what we're looking for. For example, the MWPAT, I believe all of that falls under the water enterprise, so that shouldn't fall under the town's debt, because that's not supported by the tax receipts, as well as the ambulance should be on an enterprise.
It's not an enterprise.
Ideally, I'm looking for a report that only shows what the local tax receipts are supporting. If that makes sense.
Ed just said the ambulance doesn't count.
Doesn't have its own, well, fine, leave the ambulance in there, but
It would come from the ambulance receipts, right?
yeah, I mean, right, it's not paid for by
It's not coming out of the general fund.
general tax receipts, right?
Right. So out of these, we've got one that's being paid for out of CPC, that's the Pomeroy Meadow one. We've got the others that are debt exclusion that, Ed, you said are not out of the general fund, right? Is that what you just said?
What's that?
The debt exclusion ones?
Correct.
So off this list, which a lot of these may go back to the water enterprise fund. I mean, most of this is water related or septic related. Are they all out of the water enterprise fund, or does some of those hit the general fund?
I'd have to go back and double check on those.
Okay, so we'd have to double
Especially the
check on that.
septic ones.
Okay. We don't have that
I
answer.
think the issue comes down to the multi-purpose State House loan note.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we borrowed from the State House, although I've been told the town's never done that. That 138,000, you know, that explains the issue with the budget last year, where all of a sudden you had to pull 138,000 out of general funds and throw it into your debt service. So,
Do we know do you remember what that one is for, Ed, the last one on the list, the 404,000 principal? Would the,
It's a number of different items.
different, multiple items? Okay,
I'd have to go back and take a look at what the other ones were.
yeah, okay.
yeah, and I'm sure they're all warranted and valid. I'm just saying, if we take the dump truck and, for simple math, let's say it's 300,000, I don't know what the useful life is, if it's 7 years or hopefully it's longer. We call it 10 years. then we've got to anticipate $30,000 in principal per year. So if we go this route and we have $30,000 to our 2023 or 2024, whenever we'll take delivery of it, we just basically, we're only gonna have 11,000 to play with, so that means we've got to find another $19,000 to cut from the general fund in order to support this debt.
Okay. And I guess part of the question Ed and I were talking about is in terms of the cost for this now, how much of this is due to just changes in prices, is given issues related to the supply chain that's totally clogged up all over the country right now. Is there any chance that this price of $294,000 might go down between now and an annual town meeting? If the supply chain gets unclogged like the federal government is talking about, if things start moving again, I mean, I don't know, are we taking a risk to put it forward now? Are we
I think it's-
taking a bigger risk to hold off until?
I think it's a risk either way. I mean, might it go down? It might go down a little bit. Could it go up? It, could go up also. And like I say, it's a commingled rationale as to why it's gone up basically, a little over $30,000 since the quote in May. One is the quote that we were operating under in May was actually a 2018 contract quote, which is, actually 3 years ago. So that was advantageous to the town, but it went down. So you've got 6% per year normal inflation on top of that, but you also have scarcity of steel and, also the supply side chain issues and or any computer chip issues that, go along with this. So, and, if we ordered this truck today, we'd probably end up with either not a 22, but either a 2023 or 2024 by the time we actually got it.
Right.
So that's another piece. So it's volatile. I'm the one that thought about revisiting this. Never thought it would go up this much. The other thing I think, the board may want to consider perhaps going forward is, and I'll be the first one to say that, okay, just the allocation percentage-wise of free cash into the capital account for capital stabilization isn't enough. Usually, communities will spend more than that and put some additional dollars on that. So, keep that in the back of your mind. However, one thing we've done just to keep things moving forward with capital is saying, well, geez, we can't afford that truck this year. It'll use all the capital dollars up, so let's borrow for that. Perhaps we start thinking about the fact, and it's not a sinking fund, but perhaps if we're going to borrow capital items in the future and they're not debt exclusions, we look at saying, okay, that truck's got a useful life of 10 years. We're going to borrow for 10 years. That's, $30,000 or $35,000 with interest. Therefore, we're actually going to allocate $35,000 of the capital funding in this year, if it was going to come due this year, and $35,000 each year going forward from capital funds to pay that debt. And, that's automatically coming off the top. So,
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah,
We also, if the voters support $270,000 coming off of out of, what had been previously approved for, to be borrowed, if they approve it, switching it over to CPA,
the Greenway vote.
because that was already approved in May, right, or June?
right, yeah, if that occurs, then one of the articles for the annual town meeting in May will be to rescind that $270,000 debt exclusion for the acquisition of the right-of-way. Now, would they look favorably on that and say, okay, yeah, we understand what you're
Take that.
doing, and take that
With this.
and put that, towards, and say, yes, we'll do a debt exclusion for a dump plow truck that the town needs.
Yeah. So the way this is worded is raised by borrowing or otherwise. At this point, you're not exactly recommending a debt exclusion then, or?
I would not, at this point in time, recommend a debt exclusion, plus the fact that if I was recommending a debt exclusion, this question would not even be here, because we've got that 90 or 120-day window between the town meeting vote and the ballot vote.
That's right.
Which
We can't
would
do
be
it now.
over again, so, no, I was looking at another way of funding this, because it just did go down as a debt exclusion, so. So perhaps this is one we actually look at, perhaps holding off on until the annual town meeting.
Okay. Any thoughts about, are people thinking of wanting to move forward with it, or rather holding off until May?
I think it's going to be a hard article, the way it's written, to be raised by borrowing or otherwise.
No matter what, this will be the wording that's on the article, because this is actually the wording from bond counsel. So that will not change, whether it's now or in May.
And how will that be explained to the voters?
Again, you've got the summary.
There's a whole summary paragraph, right, that comes in the
That'll be,
information packet that they receive, but
yeah.
I guess I'm wondering too, though, with the thought of taking off the 270, assuming that can go through on the special town meeting warrant now for the CPC use of monies for the Greenway, then rescinding it on the May town warrant, having this be juxtaposed to it, maybe that's an easier
That's not a
Yeah, I
bad
agree.
idea.
sell? I don't know. What's anybody else think?
That might be a good idea.
I mean,
Oh, I think that it would be.
it's a risk, I'm sure, no matter which way we go, but it feels like it would be easier to explain what, we've tried to, we've sought other resources to help us with the Greenway. It's a priority, but we recognize, this is an equal priority. We found other ways to take care of some of the Greenway money, and therefore,
Yeah.
we're not adding to it. We want to then shift that earlier approval toward the truck purchase. I feel better about doing this personally a little bit later.
When it's all happening at the same time, as opposed to wait and see, and then people say, well, what if it doesn't happen?
Right, I mean, because we talked last time of not having the rescinding part of the 270 Greenway vote on this warrant. That would be on the May one anyway, should this pass this time. So any other thoughts on that?
Now I'm worried about the 1.6 million. When, thanks, Chris. I forgot all about that one.
Yeah, that's another one.
When is that going to be, when is that going to get established? When are we going to start having to,
Jen Day was actually starting to look at going through the motions to borrow that,
yeah,
Yeah.
currently.
yeah.
Okay. I know I'm personally feeling hesitant, but I don't want to sway the opinion here of anybody, so,
I think I'd feel better if it was delayed.
okay. Joy, any thoughts?
So you're saying you think that it would be better delayed because of the juxtaposition from now until,
Just not do
Later-
this
yeah,
article,
because the
this
Greenway is
warrant.
on?
Not do this, no, just talking about the highway dump truck
Yeah, yeah.
here, just not having this on the warrant now.
yes,
Put it on the one for May, the annual town meeting, because if we keep on going, we'll have the CPC one for the use of the funds for the Greenway. If that got approved at this special town meeting, then in May, we would then put on another article to rescind that money that had already been approved as a debt exclusion last annual town
Greenway
meeting.
last time, okay, thank you.
So the
Okay, now I
270
understand,
would
yes.
come off, but we're adding 290, so it's
Okay,
not quite a wash, but it might be a bit more
Very
palatable
close,
than try to do something else.
Well, what about the other things that Randall was saying? I mean, they're already behind schedule.
There's
so
other ones
It may
too, I
not
mean-
be a wash, it might be
Well,
that there are additional
there could be
items
other
out of
ones,
capital.
which
or
would come out of
something.
capital, exactly. No, I'm not saying that this would be the only thing
Right.
from the highway department between now and May, by any means. No, I would assume he'd have something else that he'd put in here on,
Yes.
on a Maytown warrant as well, but we're just trying to compare an apple to an orange, more or less.
Or what we think people would vote in favor of
Right.
as opposed to opposing it. I mean,
Yep.
if it gets voted down, then we have no option, at least.
Right.
This way, we're facilitating what I think will be a positive
Right.
response.
All right, so with that in mind, could we have a motion about this article being on or off the warrant for this special town meeting?
I'll make a motion that we pass over this and bring it up at a later time.
Okay. Could I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
All right. John, do you have any further discussion on that?
Could you just clarify the motion?
That
The
we
motion was to pass over and not include this on the warrant.
Not included on this special town meeting warrant, pass over it, and then bring it up probably in the May special town, annual town meeting?
Well, that's not part of the,
No, but I mean, just for, in case he didn't hear all the discussion. This would be off the warrant altogether right now, knowing that it will come back sometime.
Yeah, and I understand the logic behind it. I can't, I think it needs to be acted on, so I'm gonna respectfully vote against it.
Vote against taking it off the warrant.
Correct, I think it needs to be acted on. I think the DPW has been placed in the background too long. I don't know how we're gonna pay for it, but I think that's a separate issue. So I would be in favor of putting it before the voters now.
Okay, then let me just raise this question. If we do put it on now and it gets voted down, and then we put it on again in the spring when we have an alternative,
There's nothing that prevents us from doing that.
okay,
You can do-
that's the question.
You could do that. You could put it on this
Okay.
one, and if it didn't pass, put it on
Okay.
again in May.
Well, that way we're hedging our bets as best we can, I guess.
All right, any final thoughts?
I think that's the best way to go about it.
No? Rini, any other thoughts?
I'm just wondering, I mean, I'm happy to rescind the motion. I mean, I'd like to let the voters decide, but I'm still a little in question about if it's on the warrant for this time, is it going to specify where the money's coming from? Is it, does
The summary would say that it was subject to being borrowed,
okay, but not a debt exclusion.
but not a debt exclusion, unless you, and again, we can't put a debt exclusion on this one because we're going to be over the timeline to the ballot, so.
Okay, so we're going to be saying that it'll be a borrowed,
Straight borrowing.
and therefore, will anything be expected for this particular fiscal year? Or is this going to be like,
Not in 20.
hello, capital?
Not in '22. We won't take physical delivery of this truck if it's approved
Until, yeah.
till probably '23.
Okay, so the capital committee will possibly look at it as a possible recurring event by the capital committee?
Well, I would say, I wouldn't say recurring, I would say a different truck.
Okay.
Or if it does not pass at this particular town meeting, then yes, it would have to be.
Would go to capital.
It would go to capital again for a vote to be included on the May town meeting.
Yep,
And Chris?
yes, go ahead, John.
Just to clarify, if this went to town meeting, special town meeting, and passed, that is not an automatic purchase of the truck. It would still take another act of the select board as a whole to actually purchase the truck. Correct?
I don't think so.
I don't-
Yeah, well, technically, it's basically, it's over $50,000, so the 5 members or 4 members or 3 members of the select board would have to vote to sign the contract and sign the contract.
And to Maureen's point, at that point, the question of where is this funding coming from? All we're doing is asking the citizens, if we can figure out a way to pay for this, are you in favor of us doing this? Yes or no? And if they say yes, then it's up to us to figure out how to pay for it.
Okay.
Right? It's not like the next day the superintendent of highway can go out and issue a purchase order.
Correct.
Correct.
I mean, but we're specifying that, yeah, this is going to be by straight borrowing at this point in time. So if, just to reiterate, so if this did not pass on the special town meeting, it would then most likely appear before Capital Committee, along with many other things perhaps from the Highway Department and any other requests coming in for the use of capital funds. And then however that shook out, it would be again on a warrant in May, right?
So the voters will be voting on whether they approve this
As a
to
borrowing.
be paid for by borrowing.
Correct.
And so that's all I really wanted to make sure that people understood, that it wasn't sort of, it says or otherwise. So I don't know, I just want to make sure that the voters know what they're voting on. I'm happy to rescind my motion. It'll be up to us, like John said, to figure out how it's going to get funded, but if they're willing to support it being borrowed, then it's still not the way we usually do things.
I mean, all the others say that part of the ending there, or to take any other action
Right.
related there too, that's
Right.
still there. But the or otherwise has to be in this particular one, I don't see it in the others.
Right.
But is that because it's
This is the
borrowing?
wording from the bond council.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
because it's
So,
borrowing.
think of it two different ways, okay? You're thinking it from the practical side. You could word it from the practical side. We want to purchase, we go to borrow, and bond council says, sorry, that wording isn't accurate.
Okay,
I mean, typically, all of this is dealt with by the capital committee, that they make a recommendation based on an annual request from various department heads. So this is unusual that we're putting it on the special town meeting, but I understand that the fleet's behind.
well, this is the one that fell off the override, right?
Right,
Right.
correct.
The people just voted on this.
So. Okay, do we have the same motion on the table? Are we rescinding the motion? What are we doing?
Well, right now, I put a motion to hold off on it, and it was seconded, so.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to not include this highway dump truck borrowing for $294,000 on the special town meeting warrant. We have a second. A yes vote will mean that you do not want it on the special town warrant, correct?
Correct.
Okay, could we have a vote, please? Everyone, roll call?
Fishman, no.
Groden, aye.
Piper, no.
Lumber, no.
Fowles, no. Okay, could I have a second motion to include this on the special town warrant? That motion did not pass.
I'll make a motion to include it as worded.
All right, could I have a second?
Second.
All right. Could we have a vote, please?
Fishman, aye.
Groden, no.
Piper, aye.
Lumber, aye.
Fowles, aye. Okay, motion passes to put it on the ballot, the warrant as is. Take our chances and move forward. All right, next one, employment advertising. Let me just do this one simply. To see if the town will vote to transfer $105 from the Select Board expense account to the employment advertising account for advertising incurred due to staffing shortages or to take any other action relative thereto.
I'll make
a
it,
motion to approve it as is.
Okay,
I'll second it.
all right. Any discussion? If not, could I have a vote, please?
Fishman, aye.
Groden, aye.
Piper, aye.
Lumber, aye.
Fowles, aye. Okay, thank you. All right, Francine, how about the next
Okay.
one?
Voting machine. To see if the town will vote to transfer a total of $5,700 from the retirement contributory account to the town clerk capital account to purchase one voting machine for the additional new voting precinct required in town, or take any other action relative thereto.
Okay,
I'll second it. Oh, wait, that's not really a motion, that's just being read.
that was just
Okay.
being read, yeah. How about some basic discussion on this? I know, Francine, you were going to reach out,
I
and
did.
could you fill us in on that?
Yeah, I did speak to Lindsay about, both items, the voting machine and the voting booths. I told her, estimated somewhere $7,800, $7,900 for both, and asked if there was any funds available. She said that she was going to contact on our behalf the Secretary of State's office, who is in charge of elections, and reach out to this particular person. She gave me her name and asked her to call me, which has not happened yet. So I'll circle back tomorrow and contact, she did not give me the woman's phone number. I just have her name. So I will, if I can't get her by just calling the Secretary of State's office directly, I'll get back to Lindsay and ask for the number. She understood perfectly well our request and where it was coming from.
Okay.
And can you tell me the town clerk capital account? Is that a revolving account?
I just named it that. We would set this up basically as a separate capital account number to purchase the voting machine.
Okay, so it'll be an additional line.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I played around both ways with that, or putting into like election expenses or whatever, and I thought the cleanest way was to just create a separate account just for the purchase of the additional voting machine. If you'd like me to do it differently, we can, so.
Did we not purchase one last year as well? That wasn't a separate account, or was it?
I believe that was under capital, so it would have been a separate
It
account.
was, okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion on that? I mean, it certainly seems like we have the need for 2 voting machines. I don't know, I would assume then whether or not we hear back from Lindsay and/or somebody from the state in time, nonetheless, I mean, if we didn't hear until December 10th,
You could
you
ask
can
for.
pass over it at town meeting,
Right,
right?
pass over, no action, whatever.
Yeah, go ahead, John?
My comment on this is, as I understand it, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, the town already has 2 voting machines. We have our primary and we have our backup. And now that we're going to 2 precincts, the question that I don't have an answer to is, do we now need 2 primaries and 2 backups? And so is this 5,700 really a way of saying, oh, that's only the primary, now we need another secondary backup for the other precincts, so we need another 5,700? Where, until we can figure this out, and traditionally, Galvin's office has given out aid to communities during the elections when these special circumstances come up, and I understand Francine through Lucy is working on all that. Couldn't we just take the backup machine and move that into precinct 2, and in the event that one of the precincts go down, they just switch over to a manual count? Because what's going to happen if we approve this one and we purchase 1 primary machine for precinct 2, and that leaves precinct 1 with a primary, a backup, but if the primary in 2 goes down, are they just going to take precinct 1's backup? Aren't they still going to be short? So I guess.
My sense is that the backup can do either one.
That's correct, and the probabilities of having 2 go down at once are astronomical.
Correct, so just use the backup for now until we can budget this, instead of taking capital money.
But we have money out of this retirement contributory fund. That's where this is coming from.
Well,
That's where it's coming from for the
and I
5,700.
understand that, and I guess I could kind of go along with this one, but I'm going to be hard pressed on the next one.
Yeah,
to support
no.
that one.
I don't think we're going to have a next one, and don't forget, we had that incident where they all got wet, and
Yeah,
it caused, we had to use the backup.
yeah. We had to, didn't we have to bring in a
Bring it
machine
back
from
in,
New
yeah.
Hampshire or
Or one
somewhere?
from
right?
Yeah,
another town.
that's when we
Somewhere.
had the older
Yeah.
machine, and yeah,
Right.
it was tough to find
Yeah.
one that would actually be a backup.
Would be a compatible one with what we have.
But we're
So,
also a small community, it's not going to take that long to hand count the ballots.
Well, I happen to watch them counting ballots, and you'd be surprised. It's a laborious task.
I don't hear
In the
you.
unlikely event the primaries fail, yes.
I mean, I think, I think our chances are pretty good that both primary machines would not go down at the same time, and if anything, we would need the backup for 1 precinct perhaps. I mean, I think that's a risk
Correct.
worth taking, so.
And if we get funding between now and
Yeah,
then, we
and
can
if we
always
get
pass
funding,
over it.
exactly, we can figure out a way to pass over it if we do get some funding from Galvin's office.
Correct, but I also remember I also remember our town clerk saying that she had $10,000 available in her line item, that if need be, she could spend on this. So
I don't remember hearing that.
she said, worst case scenario, she would use her $10,000 in voting expenses to cover these expenses.
I don't remember that because she's going to have to hire more election workers as well.
Again, we get receipts from the state to cover those expenses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
I don't remember that, honestly.
Yeah, I don't remember that either.
So,
What I heard her say is worst comes to worst, we do have voting booths.
yeah, I agree. On the voting booths, she said that she could use the ones that were already done and were stored at the highway department or something
Right,
like
right,
that.
right.
That was for the voting booths, but I don't recall that
For the voting
for
machine.
the machine itself.
Yeah, and I guess given the dollar amount, I'm okay with the 5,700. I just don't want to see another request for another 5,700
Gotcha,
in less than a year for another backup.
gotcha, understood.
Yeah, me neither.
Yep, okay, valid. Okay, so can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to transfer $5,700 from the retirement contributor account to the town clerk capital account.
All right, could I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Can I just say
Oh,
something
sorry.
first?
Yes, sorry.
I guess I just don't want the expectation that there's a line item called a capital. Like, can it be specific to this item? You're basically saying that you're going to create this
Equipment,
Yeah,
voting equipment or something?
Yes.
voting equipment or something rather
Because I
than
think that just saying it's a capital account just opens the door for,
Yeah,
this is
that's good.
enough. Yeah,
another confusion as well, so, okay.
yeah, I think.
So we
the-
can, good suggestion, maybe a town clerk, a voting equipment
yes,
account or something along that line. Okay,
because that's what it is.
Yeah, okay, voting equipment, because capital is just too broad.
okay,
So that's what my motion will be. If there was a second, if you're willing to go along with that.
okay. All right, so with that slight modification, I think we have a motion and a second on the floor. Could we have a vote, please?
Tishman, I,
Groden, aye.
Piper, aye.
Lumber,
Fowles eye. Okay. Voting booths.
And just so you
Yes.
know, Lucy says the 10 grand is in election expense. She said if she had to use it, it would dwindle that account, and that account is used for ballots.
Yeah, we don't want that to happen.
Yeah, okay. Did you hear that, John? No.
What was the last part that Ed said? I know the 10,000 in the account and,
If she were to use it, go ahead, Ed.
It would dwindle that account, and that account is used for ballots.
It's the election expense account.
For the ballots itself, yeah.
yep,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, so voting booths. Rini, you want to take this one?
To see if the town will vote to transfer a total of $2,200 from undetermined account to the town clerk capital account, or let's say a town clerk
Voting equipment.
voting expense
Or-
account to purchase 10 voting booths for the additional new voting precinct required in town, or to take any other action relative thereto.
Okay. So just some general discussion first.
well, just based on the conversation we just had, that there were voting booths that could be, that were refurbished, that could be reused, I would vote to take this off of the warrant.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I'm wondering with the retirement account, we have a few things that, coming from there. Do you know where that expense leaves us? Or that line leaves us?
Hang on, and I'll tell you.
Yeah, if we had about 16,000 in there.
16,606 and
We have
then
about 7
some
left.
change. I'm just going to call it
It would only leave
16,606.
us around 1,000,
Where's the 16? 9 from the library,
9,
9?
and then 5,700 for the,
Okay, yeah.
for the voting machine, so at most 1,500 maybe, out of that 16,000 would be left, maybe? Or something?
Leaves that account with $1,009.
Yep, $1,009, okay, that's
Okay,
what would
well,
be left in the retirement contributory, taking the library money and the voting booth out of it. That would leave about $1,000 left in that account, so it could not come out of that account. Okay, any other thoughts about that? John, I think you already expressed your thoughts that you were not terribly in favor of this one, all right?
Yeah, I'm not either. I think we can wait to see what happens with funding from the elections office. We can also wait to see, I think if Lucy says that there's enough for now, for the next election. I think we'll just, by then, we'll know more.
Yeah. Okay, we've got time before that. Okay. Could I have a motion?
I'll
on
make a
the table
motion
for
to
that?
pass over voting booth article.
Okay, and not have it on?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Joy, any thoughts? No?
No.
Okay, could we have a vote, please?
Tishman, aye.
Road and I.
Piper, aye.
Lumber, aye.
Fowles, aye. Okay, so this one will not be on the warrant. All right, thank you. Recycling containers. Joy, you want to take that one?
To see if the town will vote to appropriate/transfer $25,500 to fund the purchase of 2 replacement recycling containers for the transfer station, said sum to be taken from the transfer station retained earnings account, or take any other action relative thereto.
Okay, we had a little bit of discussion on that last week when Randall presented the rationale for us, to us. Any initial thoughts on that? Or are we ready to have a motion on this? Go ahead, John.
Chris?
Yes, go on.
My only question is, do we believe, because I don't have the paper in front of me, do we believe that the retained earnings of the transfer station can support this transfer?
Yes.
Ed says yes.
Yep, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Could I have a motion, Francine? Yes? Or
Yeah, I'll move to appropriate $25,000 from the
25,000,
transfer returned earnings.
25,500, sorry.
$25,500 to purchase 2 replacement recycling containers.
I'll second it.
Okay. If no further discussion, could we have a vote, please?
Tishman, aye.
Road and I.
Piper, aye.
Lumber, aye.
Fowles, aye. Okay, thank you. John, you want to take this one? Funding for 21?
To see if the town will vote to transfer a total of an unknown amount of money from an unknown location down to the town accountant's expense account to engage a vendor to help close the fiscal year 2021 financial records of the town or take any other actions relative thereto.
Okay, so this, I think we have to turn right over to Ed to give us a little bit of detail. Thank you.
And basically, the only account, should we move forward with this, to would have the funding to cover it, would be operating stabilization. I did press Melanson a little bit today and ask if they could at least give us a ballpark range on what it might cost. And they did say they would estimate it between $35,000 and $50,000. And they really wouldn't know, fully know until they got in and looked at it. It might be a little bit less than that, or, you know, if it was really detailed, it might be a little bit more than that, so.
That's definitely a lot more than I was hoping for.
It's in the range I expected.
But when we have an audit that's closer to 22,000, how we come up with 35 to 50 to close out the year?
It's basically going to be billed by the hour, and just depends on how many hours it takes.
Didn't we also discuss a previous accountant coming in and helping and mentoring our accountant?
That's for the
What's that?
tax rate.
Wasn't there also?
That was a tax rate issue.
tax
Oh, that was a tax rate issue, okay.
Yeah. But we have not heard from the other 2 possible candidates yet, right?
Correct.
For the statement of work was sent to. Okay.
I just find it incredible that it's pretty much the entire yearly salary of the account. I mean, I just,
Yeah. I mean, it's not that the interim accountant didn't do anything. I mean, I realize that things have to be verified and re-verified, and maybe, you know, some reverse entries, et cetera, have to happen, but it, you know, it
John,
seems
do you
like an
have
awful
any-
lot of money.
John, you have any other ideas?
No, I'm not surprised by the dollar cost. I think, what's our balance do we even have that available in the capital stabilization account?
Oh, God, yes.
Be in the operating
Or,
stabilization.
I'm sorry, operating.
Yes.
Apparently, we do, yes. I mean, I guess,
Yeah, I'd have to double check, but I believe that account was close to 400,000.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my only other thought would be is that, I think we need to move forward with this. But B, if we do move forward with this, then I really don't see the reason of having that audit,
Yeah.
which is a $24,000 savings.
Well, and we couldn't have an audit with this company. I mean, the other idea was we could at least, if we did not use Melanson as the vendor for this statement of work to close out 21, we could do perhaps a one-year extension of their audit contract to get us through.
But then we have this bylaw.
Well,
Yeah, right.
and that's the other issue, right?
Yeah, well, it's not only a bylaw, it's in mass general laws also. However,
Right.
there are communities that, even though it's in mass general laws, do not do an audit every year. But I do have to let you know, it's also in the MGLs.
Yeah, it's part of the MGL as well as just the regular bylaws, but, no, what I was saying is if we didn't use Melanson for this task, that does, I realize the money's the issue, but we do have money budgeted for an audit, and they would be able to perhaps be agreeable to a short-term extension for 1 year to get us through the coming year, but we need to hear from
Yeah.
at least one of the other two vendors that we sent this to, so I think we had said that we wanted a final decision for sure by the 23rd, which is our next meeting, right? I'm wondering if we can still reach out to the other two, saying, look, we absolutely need to know if you're interested in this or not by, Thursday this week, and if not, if we don't hear from you, we're going to assume that you're no longer interested, or you're not interested, or something.
I've already
You've
reached
done
out
that?
to one other entity, or
Okay.
one of the entities.
And we haven't heard yet?
No.
I mean, I think we need to, this task obviously has to get done. I'm not in favor of just going with only one entity because that's the only quote we have at this point in time. I guess the Operation Stabilization is the source, is what you're saying, so that blank gets filled in. Could we put in an up to amount? Does that make sense or not? No?
No.
No, okay. Should we wait until our next meeting to get a more definitive amount to know whether or
Well-
not these people would bid on it?
Why can't we put a cap on it?
Well, you're putting a cap on it if you put in 35,000 or 40,000. You can't
We're
spend
saying-
more than that. That's it. Boom.
if we
But
said-
you cannot use legally up to as an appropriation. It has to be a dollar amount.
Not to exceed
So you could say
$50,000.
not to exceed $50,000,
Yeah.
as an example.
It's not an up to, I'd have to check on not to exceed.
Yep.
But, generally, if you appropriate X amount of dollars, you're not supposed to exceed that anyway. So,
Right,
Right.
right,
it becomes a little bit redundant.
true, okay. Is there any harm in holding this off until our next meeting, until we know for sure
Have a
whether we
number.
have any additional bids?
I would say, have a vote on, if you're going to include it or not, but you're going to fill in
Fill
the
in the
dollar
blanks.
amount
Okay.
at the next meeting.
Okay.
All right, then could we have a motion to that effect? That we,
So I'll make a motion to approve this pending further clarification of the scope of dollars,
okay,
with the funding source being the operating stabilization account.
all right, thank you. Could I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion?
So with this being on the warrant, we're also gonna have to put on the warrant the bylaw requirement for going the annual audit?
We're
No.
not saying we're
Right now,
doing
we're
that.
not saying that we're
No,
going to
we're
not
not
do
saying
it.
that, no.
Oh, okay, all right.
No.
Okay,
Okay,
that's the only question I had.
okay, all right. Could I have a vote, please?
Fishman, aye?
Groden, aye.
Piper, aye.
Lumber, aye.
Fowles, aye. Okay, and we will come back with precision at our next meeting. Okay, Rini, how about the next one?
To see if the town will vote to transfer $8,000 from the operating stabilization account to the town tree warden expense account or to additional trees.
To remove additional trees.
To
it should
remove
say.
additional, I was just trying to work that out. Yeah.
That's my fault.
To remove additional trees during FY '22 or to take any other action relative thereto. So we did the same thing last year, although unfortunately we didn't increase the budget. Do you remember the dollar amounts? What's in the line right now?
$8,000.
8,000, I think.
I don't think we did it last year. I think we did it the previous year, but I could be
Okay.
wrong.
So we're asking for a line item of 16,000? Or
Yes,
just- yeah.
it's not even halfway through the year, and from what he's got spent, what he has for incoming invoices, and the tree that's supposed to, big tree that's supposed to come down over on East Street next week, that account is now depleted already.
Yeah.
And we haven't even begun winter
Is
yet.
that East Street tree, that's not part of the tree, that's not part of the bridge work?
No,
No. Okay,
unfortunately.
yeah, really. Okay. I mean, this seems like a risk prevention strategy. I mean,
Right,
I
it
can't
is.
imagine going into winter without
Yeah.
having,
Yeah.
more than a few pennies in our account for tree removal.
Yeah, I definitely think it's another pet public safety thing.
Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? If not, could I have a motion?
I'll move that we transfer $8,000 from operating stabilization to the tree warden expense account.
Okay, could I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor?
Tishman, aye?
Groden, aye?
Piper, aye.
Lumber, no.
Fowles, aye. Okay. Next, funding for tax recap. Go ahead, Joy.
To see if the town will vote to transfer $1,560 from the assistant accountant wage account to the accounting expense account for the cost of a vendor to help compile and submit the fiscal year 2022 tax recap forms, or to take any other action relative thereto.
Okay. Ed, would you like to fill us in a little bit, please?
Vicky Morrow did agree to help Bradley with putting together the reports that are necessary and the submittal that are required for the fiscal '22 recap to DLS so we can set our tax rates. Vicky had estimated that it would take 20 hours. I fudged a little bit and calculated 30 hours at the rate that we had paid her previously for the fiscal year 20 close, which was $52 an hour. That comes to the $1,560, and that funding is available in the assistant accountant wage
Great.
account.
So she said it would take 20 and you budgeted for 30, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So,
Okay, yep. All right. And if we recall, we had given Ed the go-ahead to get moving on that as long as we had an agreement. So this is basically just to simply get this on the warrant to be able to transfer the funds,
yes.
Correct.
to have the money to pay it. But we were going to let Ed move ahead and get going on this immediately, okay?
Okay. And do we have a completion date?
Did we
No, we do not.
did we say the tax recap had to be submitted by a certain date?
Yep.
Wasn't it the 30th of?
I think that was it, yes.
30th of September, yeah, of November?
November, yes.
November.
I wish it was
I'm
back
only a
in
month or two
September.
off. Yeah, really, okay.
Okay.
All right, well, hopefully she's got the time and can make this happen during this coming couple weeks. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So thank you ahead of time to Vicky for being willing to do that. All right, could we have a motion to this effect, please?
I'll move to see if the town will vote to transfer $1,560 from the assistant accountant wage account to the accounting expense account for the cost of a vendor to help compile and submit the fiscal year 2022 tax recap forms.
Okay, could I have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Tishman, aye?
Groden, aye?
Piper, aye.
Lumber, aye.
Fowles, aye. Okay. All right.
So we don't have to approve the CPA ones, right?
You should vote to approve.
Put them on the warrant?
Including them.
Okay.
And then, don't forget, there's that little note on there for the annual audit bylaw requirement, forego for 1 year. If you are going to
Yeah.
do that, we will need to know that.
Well, do we want to take that up right now, or what are we thinking right now about having or not having an audit? Do we need to wait until we figure out whether Melanson might be our vendor for the closeout first and pick this up on next Tuesday?
Or we, you know, I
Or-
mean, we could have the language ready and then we could pass over it if we need to.
Yeah, I'm not ready to vote on it.
Yeah, I agree.
John, any thoughts?
No, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts, but no, I guess I'm fine with you that let's do the audit. I just think the consequence is we need to find $24,000 from the operating budget to cut
Yep.
when this comes around. So there's a cause and effect here by doing this, and basically we're double spending. And I think we have to. It's just we have to deal, I at least am acknowledging on my end that there's gonna be an effect here, detrimental effect on the budget
Right.
to do this.
There will be an effect, but I am one that would recommend that we still do the annual audit. But
Yeah.
we'll take that up at another time.
Of all years, it just seems
Yeah.
like
I
it
think
would
that,
be,
yeah.
you know, without the accountant for a lot of it, for the pandemic and extra funds and everything else,
Yeah.
I just would have a hard time saying, no, let's not do it.
Yeah, I think it would be a hard year to forego an audit, frankly. I mean, I think we've
And
got lots of things that have happened this year that you've just mentioned, and I think
Yeah.
it would go a long way to having clarity with the voters and transparency to have an audit and do it the way we're supposed to do it, so,
I wonder if with the latest read, and again, this is my layman's interpretation of the reading, I'll defer to Ed, but given that all this happened with COVID, given that the position was open, and one could attribute that it was open because nobody wanted to make a change in the middle of COVID, and that's why the position went open longer and longer, I think there's an argument to be made, whether it's successful or not, that this redundancy that we're putting in by bringing in somebody to assist us in closing the books could be a true, what do you call it? ARPA?
ARPA.
ARPA money?
American Recovery,
Yeah,
ARPA.
Yeah,
You know, because we had a reduction in service, and we couldn't fill the service because of COVID, because rightfully so, who wanted to change their job in the middle of a pandemic? So the job went open, and that had a negative impact on the community. There might be an argument in there to say that this extra effort that we want to do to secure our books could be charged off to them versus taking out operating expense. I mean, it's a stretch, but.
yeah,
Yeah, I
sure
think it's a
it's selling.
stretch.
yeah. Let's take that up maybe at our next meeting and not go into that debate tonight, but it's food for thought till then. Okay? All right, I think we're toward the end, except we have 3 community preservation articles.
Let me bring up one other just
Okay.
question before the
Yeah.
community preservation. Would the select board like me to include a warrant article to also transfer the roughly $65,000 for the ambulance payment that will be due the beginning of April from the ambulance receipts reserved for appropriation, since theoretically the next available town meeting that we actually know about at this point in time will not occur until May?
So that would be assuming we wouldn't have yet another special one before May, most
Yeah.
likely, is what you're saying.
Correct.
In anticipation of not having another special.
Right.
in the event that should happen. I think that's a wise decision.
That's probably a good move to
Okay.
do that. So could we have some level of motion on that?
Sure, I'll move that we move $65,000 from ambulance receipts to the ambulance
Debt
debt.
payment account due in April? Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. Any comments, questions? All right, and this is basically just a timing issue, assuming we don't have another special town meeting before our annual in May.
Correct.
This would have to be okay
And
to
that's a
do.
firm amount, 65,000?
I'll have to actually
Okay,
Check.
get,
okay.
I'm sure it will come out with dollars and cents.
Yeah.
And principal and interest account too, probably, so.
Right, okay. So, any discussion? If not, could I have a vote, please?
Fishman, aye?
Groden, aye.
Piper, aye.
Lumber, aye.
Fowles, aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Francine, you want to take the first?
Okay, the
Canal?
canal. To see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of $20,000 from community preservation funds to the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, New Haven, to Northampton Canal Project for Southampton's share of identifying and recording the path of the New Haven Northampton Canal. Said funds to be transferred from community preservation surcharges - historical preservation account, or take any other action relative thereto.
Okay. All right, so that is basically the article itself. Any comment on that? If not, could we just go right to a motion? The CPC has obviously approved this already. Joy, do you want to? Oh, sorry.
Chris?
Yes,
Sorry, just
Go ahead.
before somebody makes a motion.
yes, go ahead.
Could I go out on a limb, and since CPA already approved all three, can I make a motion to approve all three as presented?
Yeah, I'll support that.
That would be okay with me. I just had some questions about the park grant. That's got weird special language. I know that Ed may want to explain, but we can get to that point.
Well, just look at it as total draft language. I have to,
Still got to be,
I think it's got to be combined, and then I have to work with legal counsel on it also.
okay. All right, so your motion, John, is to approve all three?
All three as
Canal Greenway
written,
and Park.
understanding that they've already been approved by the CPA.
Okay.
I'll
and that
second that.
And that final legal language would be forthcoming? Okay.
Correct.
All right. Did I hear a second, Rini?
Yep.
All right. So just for everybody else to understand, we've got the canal for $20,000, the Greenway, this is the $270,000 from community preservation for the acquisition and partly design costs for the railway, and then the park grant, which is for the Parks Commission and the improvements at Conant Park, namely the walking path and the small splash pad. And
I'll
that
just
was-
just mention the Greenway, that the voters already approved that. We're just shifting the actual funding of it.
Correct. We are shifting the funding to the CPC now that those funds can be used for that purpose.
Right. and
Correct.
With the intent of actually, in the future, rescinding the debt exclusion
Right.
vote that was approved for this.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. And I believe, let's see. I think that's all
So
we've
if
got.
this doesn't pass, this Greenway, then the debt exclusion still exists.
Is valid.
That's still
Correct.
valid, right, right. Okay, and I think, sorry, the park comes from the undesignated account as well, Ed, or?
I believe that was it. I didn't go back, I actually used the draft language
Okay.
that
Yeah.
was sent to us rather than, but yes, I
Right.
probably have to go in and include that also. but-
Okay,
And it's for 86.5.
for 86.5 on that one,
Well,
right?
we actually have to write this for the entire cost of the
It's reimbursable.
Because it's a reimbursable,
project, and then
yeah,
state that the 86.5 is coming from the CPC funds, and yes.
yeah. So it just has to be broken out. The state has to see that
Okay.
we've actually approved the full amount, but knowing that there's a portion that is being asked for from CPC. So basically, the canal is being approved from the historical funds, historical preservation account, and I believe the other two, Greenway and Park, are coming out of the undesignated account. Okay, so with that in mind, we have a motion on the floor. Did I hear a second?
Yes, I did second it.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor, please?
Tishman, aye.
Groden, aye.
Piper, aye.
Lumber, aye.
Fowles, aye. Okay, good. And I think that is it for the articles for the town warrant. Is that correct? We've added one.
Yes.
Thanks, Ed, for reminding us about the ambulance one.
You're welcome.
Okay, and with that, we have nothing else on the agenda for tonight. Our next meeting is November 23rd. I'm sorry, our next meeting is actually
Thursday.
Thursday,
the
November
18th
18th.
at 5 PM, just to open any bids we get for the Route 10 Sidewalk Grant Project.
Right, and that's going to be at 5 o'clock.
5 p.m.,
A
correct.
different time, so 5 o'clock on the 18th, just for that one item to open bids for the cemetery sidewalk project, for which we have a grant already from DOT, but we need to see what kind of bids we have for the actual work. So we'll meet on the 18th, and then our next meeting is on the 23rd, as usual, at 6 PM, okay?
Ask a
Reedy,
question. I don't know, Francine, I believe you were on the select board at the time, but I know that others weren't. We had a presentation, it was done by Fuss and O'Neill, as you might remember, they're the company that helped with the MVP. And they presented limited sewer, and I think it goes from the Westfield line to the Easthampton line.
Yes.
And it was very impressive presentation, and I was just wondering if the select board, just thinking about ARPA funds and thinking about water problems that exist along this historical district here, if at some point in the next month or two, the select board might want to see that
Them
again.
back.
Okay, yep. And just for what it's worth, it is posted up on our website. It is there under the select board page, I
Yes.
think.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's there.
There's I think that one and the broadband presentation
Right.
are
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Right, the two presentations are actually there that anybody could check in and look at. But yeah, we might want
I
to,
just think it might be a good time to kind of rethink about that.
Yes, yeah.
Especially everything going on with
right,
affordable housing.
exactly.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so with that in mind, could I have a motion to adjourn if there's no other business that can't wait?
So moved. Oh, second.
Okay.
All right, all those in favor?
Fish and I.
Road and I.
Piper, aye.
Bummer, aye.
Fowles, aye. Okay, thank you. We are adjourned at 8 o'clock.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks very
Appreciate it.
much. Thanks, John, for joining in. Much appreciate it. Anybody that meets in here or upstairs? Yeah, no, this is for Raphael, of course. Yes, that's what I thought. Joan said she had it, and I said, well, just leave it for me, and I'll come get it. All right. Good Lord, what's in here?